Hey, this is Sandy.
And Randy.
And we're here on AT Corner.
Being an athletic trainer comes with ups and downs, and we're here to showcase them all.
Join us as we share our world in sports medicine.
Welcome back to another episode of AT Corner. What do we have for this story episode today, babe?
Today we are talking about burnout, which is unfortunately so prevalent in our profession of athletic training, and as two young athletic trainers, it's something that we have both experienced.
Yes, it is very easy to get caught in that and takes a lot to get out sometimes.
So today we're going to be talking about our experience. We're going to be talking about your experience. Then next week we're going to be bringing in a guest speaker to interview about their experience with burnout and how to address it.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that conversation. You know, we had a brief conversation with her already, and it got me really amped for what we're going to talk about.
So let's start with, what does burnout actually feel like?
Terrible. That's what it feels like. It feels terrible.
Well, I think we get that. No one wants to feel burnout. One of my favorite answers is actually this first one that I put in from Josh M. He said, it's not as much a feeling as much as it is total lack of feeling.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. I'd say that's how it manifests with me.
Do you want to talk about your experience?
I mean, it was a bad work environment, and that's exactly what it felt like. It just felt like, I don't know. There was no motivation to wake up the next day to go into work. So, I never knew what that actually felt like. So experiencing that and knowing what it is now and knowing that not every place is like that, was refreshing. And it helped me actually combat that, because I found a place that's way more supportive than where I was at before. And that's what made the difference.
How did you know that it was not athletic training you were burnt out from and it was just that job?
Well, it was because I've been in hard situations with athletic training and found it a challenging fun. Like, it was fun being challenged, whereas that was just demoralizing.
Yeah, I remember that.
Exactly.
It was a hard year. Yeah, so burnout looks different for everyone.
Absolutely.
Do you want to read this next one?
Yeah, so Shelby C said, I'm sure burnout is different for everyone, but for me, it's been more emotional than normal. Much quicker to be angry/frustrated, exhausted all the time. Doing small tasks seems like entirely too much work. Dishes, laundry, cooking. Zero desire to be at practices/games. The list goes on and on. And that is definitely something that you don't think about, is burnout doesn't just affect your work personality and your life at work. It also has the effect of trickling into your personal life as well.
Yeah, I remember when Randy was burnt out at his job, he would come home and not want to do anything, which was really frustrating on my end, because I felt like I was doing everything at home, and I was also a little bit burnt out from my job as well. Actually, it was more of burnt out of that specific setting. So mine was actually a really easy change, but Randy was working really, really long hours, and I remember it was just like, from the outside, I felt frustrated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something that came up in our DMs that was actually really interesting was there were two people who talked about the difference between burnout and being fed up, and also burnout versus depression, which I thought were very, very interesting. All three of those topics kind of feed into each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this next one from April O, she was talking about how she right now is actually really burnt out. She said, I want to do more for people in general. Plus, I feel like sometimes I'm not appreciated or I'm hated by coaches. I'm just trying to do my job. I shouldn't be challenged when I'm trying to do the right thing for a developing athlete. One game is not worth a lifetime of pain or more severe injury. So am I burnt out or fed up? I'm not sure. Maybe just an awkward career spot.
Yeah, that's true. There is definitely a difference between burnt out and just irritated and fed up at the situation. So it, like you said, it manifests differently in everybody.
Yeah, and I think that's the most difficult thing to process, is if you don't know yourself that well, how are you going to tell the difference between being burnt out? How are you going to tell the difference between being fed up? How are you going to tell the difference between being depressed? Also, I want to point out that maybe it doesn't matter what the difference is. Obviously, something's not working.
Yeah.
There's a wheel that's a little bit loose. that we need to screw on a little bit tighter. So we got to figure out how to address that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was talking to Maddie about this, actually. She was talking about how she can tell when she is burnt out. And this one's more related to work, which I think when I was looking up to me, I was trying to figure out what is the difference between burnout and depression, because a lot of times they can look very similar.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that burnout is a little bit more work related. And yes, like you said, it can spill over into your personal life. But I think burnout, you will feel more of that dread of a certain thing and of what you are burnt out from. And usually burnout, you will have a little bit more, you will respond a little bit better if you take time away or you take time off, which we are actually going to talk about that too, because it's not always possible to take time off if you're burnt out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, do you want to read what Maddie said?
Yeah, so she says, I can tell when I don't feel motivated to learn. Like doing any extra reading, listening to educational podcasts, CEUs, which I normally actually love doing, feel like a huge burden. And my tolerance for anything outside of my bubble is low. I snap easily, I'm grumpy, I'm not finding joy or motivation in the usual. I feel like what I'm describing could also be mistaken as depression, but they feel quite different. And I agree. Absolutely. That's definitely... there definitely is a difference between not finding the joys and things like that. And also some people, like a very common symptom reported in depression is just overall not feeling like you want to even get up.
No. So there's a lot of reasons why this could happen, but I really want to stress that the reason that you are burnt out is not your fault.
Yeah. That's, you know, you're not putting yourself in that position, you know, it's happening to you.
There's some of the stories that came through that people... Actually, I do want to say that we've had some very popular story topics, but by far, this was the most popular story topic that we've ever had. There were so many messages that I literally almost couldn't keep up with them. And I tried to respond to everyone, but if I didn't respond to you, I'm so sorry. This next one is just this AT who just got hit with all of these things at once.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a huge cause of burnout.
Oh, big time.
These are things out of her control. So basically she said, this year with COVID has been miserable, to be honest. I am a D1 athletic trainer in a conference that played a fall soccer season. We were all asked to work football when they returned in June, and then soccer returned in July. I am also responsible for collecting physical paperwork and organizing mass physicals for all teams. Between August and October, I had 10 season-ending injuries.
Oh my goodness.
Including 3 ACLs and 5 other surgeries.
That's terrible.
I cried every day on my way home, even had a crying spot at work, and when stuff got really bad. I started spending all of my free time looking for new jobs and how to get out of the profession. I've never felt like I did for that 6-month period starting in June and hope to never feel like that again. I had 1 more this spring and a couple more surgeries. Ended the season with total 12 available players for a game requiring 11.
Ooh, that's tough.
I actually chose to return to school when I was offered the opportunity to go start my PhD so I can join the academic side and be an athletic training professor.
Nice, that's awesome.
Yeah, and we actually have had some athletic training professors who have been burnt out.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why they still want to be connected to athletic training, but they don't want to be clinical.
Yeah.
And honestly, we're one of our main things, that one of our priorities coming on the show today with this topic that's so relevant. We want to do it justice, and we want to make sure that you guys know that we are not here to tell you to stay in athletic training if it's not right for you.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing, the whole point of why we're doing this topic is because we want to show you that this isn't forever, that you can get out of this cycle. You know, I did it. Sandra, you did it. Like, you can battle this and have those tools to get out of what you're feeling.
Yeah, so we did actually have someone who called into the show, which was super exciting. You guys are always willing to do that. Just make sure you message us and we'll get back to you about that. So Miguel, we were talking to Miguel about this. And
my guy, Miguel.
And so basically what we were talking to him about was that there's something that got you into athletic training, and yes, that's very important. But what's more important is what keeps you going.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I know you've heard us say this a million times, so we got to figure out what your why is. And eventually I want to put together a whole episode of what makes people continue in athletic training, what keeps them going.
I think that'd be a good one. I think we'd get a lot of responses for that.
I think so too. I mean, especially because we were talking about this is something that everyone has either experienced personally or known someone who's experienced. And I know that is also a topic that hits home for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely.
So before we talk too much, why don't we hear from Miguel?
It's all you, Miguel.
Burnout is attributed so much to it, where it's like you're expected to be there, but are you valued when you are there? But even then, it also kind of goes back down to the individual. Like being an AT it's a calling. In all of its own senses, you're a healer. You're a servant. You're there to serve these kids and take care of them and their families and that community. Especially if you belong to like a one high school town. Where that community takes a lot of pride in their high school sports. Being around those communities, sometimes there's a lot of pressure, but I've also seen it where they do great jobs taking care of their athletic trainers. Sometimes they do a really terrible job too. So communication is a huge thing. And also the number one thing too is just you might not fit in with your personality around that area. So it's important to have an identity outside of what it is that we do. It's always going to be a part of who we are. Like I'm never going to stop being an athletic trainer. It's so in my own DNA. I don't know what I would do without it. So it's important that if you're feeling this way, communicate. That's why like mentorship is such a huge thing. And also community inside of the profession is also another huge component, to talk to the people that are around you to see how do they deal with the same issue, whether it was a bad day, a bad season, or just you have just not so great admin, on you. It's why I'm super grateful for, my network and some of my own mentors and even my former preceptors that I still go back to for all kinds of advice, whether it's just a vent, or just kind of get some guidance and a better idea. I remember the football season right before COVID. I went to my very first preceptor. I went to go watch a football game that he was working. Talked to him during the game and even after the game. He told me, he was listening to me, complain about my job, and he reminded me to, just look for why I got in this in the first place. My first idea definitely wasn't to go and work the secondary school system, but once I got there, I fell in love with it. Don't get me wrong, it's amazing if you get to work just one sport and specialize into that. But to be a jack of all trades type where you get to see so many different things throughout so many different parts of the year, it's amazing and it's fun. And you also get to work on those kids, those athletes that they come in as these like geeky little squeaky 14-year-old, 15-year-old freshman kids, and then you watch them grow up in front of you to then they go to college, they go D1, and then all of a sudden they're declaring for the draft. Like just an amazing opportunity just to be a part of that, of their journey at such a young age. So that's why like something now that's been helping me out the most is just my athletes, because they know how much I'm working. And it's so important for the coaches right now to also be aware of the workload that's going on. I've had to have 3 conversations with 3 different coaches about the work demand that I'm under. Not attacking them at all, but just standing firm in what it is that I'm doing, because I'm literally doing the best that I can.
I like what you said about figuring out what your why is, because what got you into athletic training is never going to change, but why you keep doing it might.
Absolutely. There was something that one of my professors in my program, my master's program, my healthcare admin program, told me. And she quoted Ali saying that, I may screw this up, but it's something along the lines of, everyone has their own values. Everyone has their own morals. But 30 years from now, if those things haven't been changed or challenged, you haven't learned. So your what, who, when, where, and how that got you into this field, it's important. because it's going to go through a journey. Like, we're not the same ATs or people that we were a year ago. COVID changed so many of us through this time period. People hung it up. People went back to school. People are going right back into it. You know, people are struggling. People are also thriving into this. And I think a huge component that's, you know, kind of dictating which side of the fence you're on is how have you adapt to it? Have you reestablished your why, or are you still searching for that? And it's totally fine if you are. You're just on this journey and you're on that walk. So just taking that introspective look and saying, this is what got me in here. So what's going to get me going? You know, what's going to keep me going? What's going to be that thing, that catalyst that's going to make me that next level AT than where I was before?
So we know some athletic trainers who have changed settings and it's been so good for their career and they've loved it. But there have also been some athletic trainers who we know who couldn't fall in love with the setting they were in, a new setting, and they have left the profession but still have a love for athletic training. And I think that's something that I want to point out, is that even if you can't find something that's right for you, it doesn't have to, like, not everyone is made to be an athletic trainer. I mean, look how many...
And that's okay.
Exactly.
That is okay.
Exactly. I mean, there are some people who do a career for 40 years and then they go off and find something that they love after they retire.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's literally no right answer here. And I think that it's something that is really, I feel like is really hurtful, is when people say that you need to stay in this profession. If you, like, it doesn't make sense. We complain about burnout and we complain that so many people are leaving the profession, but then we make people feel bad for leaving the profession. And then it doesn't make sense to me.
No.
If you love it, then stay. If you love yourself and you don't love athletic training, then maybe it's not.
And I think, you know, a lot of people that do, like, have that view about when people leave, it's okay if they leave as long as they don't, like, trash athletic training afterwards. Like, still be respectful of the profession and maybe do your part to change it for someone in the future. You know, obviously know what that felt like to not be in love with this, and there were problems with it. So, you know, it helps to, like, okay, well, now you can be part of that solution, so someone coming through athletic training wouldn't have to go through that sudden career change that can be costly.
And we're going to talk with Erica, who's our guest speaker next week. We're going to talk with her a little bit more about some of the pervasive ideas that people have been saying that kind of lead to burnout, kind of like things like we work long hours and we don't get paid and we're not appreciated. And basically, if you keep creating this idea, then there's no way we're going to get out of it. It's kind of like the pain cycle. Absolutely.
Even though it is the reality of athletic training in some settings, it is not the reality of athletic training in all settings.
Exactly. It's like that stereotype that you can't get away from.
Yes.
I think that's the frustrating thing. So I know we just talked about what burnout is and what it feels like, and thank you everyone who's been so vulnerable in telling us how they felt about their specific situations and their past and hopefully not their future. But now we want to talk more about how to recognize the stressors before it leads to burnout. So Sofia W was talking, she has a really great analogy actually. She said that burnout for me feels like it's a chore to have to go into work, and not even my favorite athletes can really pick me up out of the gray clouds that hover. Like a thunderstorm, I can tell when the clouds start building. I know I need some self-love before it gets much worse. Left unchecked, it can quickly develop into a full-blown thunderstorm. So I asked her how she usually prevents it when she starts noticing this, and she said, sometimes I get a massage, sometimes it means spending a whole day baking. It kind of depends on what I'm in the mood to do and how much free time I have.
Nice, that's good. It's good to see that, you know, someone knows how that feels, and then they have the tools to be like, okay, here's where I can stop it before it, like she said, becomes a thunderstorm or a tornado.
Something bad. So I know that for me, the Enneagram has been, I know we talked about this before, so I'm not going to get on my soapbox, but it's been so helpful for me to figure out like kind of what I look like when I'm stressed and how I respond. And so usually I'm very goal oriented, but when I'm stressed out, I become complacent, and that's a red flag for me. I take on meaningless tasks and I lack passion, which is something that is scary. Also good to note, and this is something that might be helpful when you're working with your athletes or maybe for yourself. I don't think I've told this on the show, but I have Crohn's disease. And it's a lot of times triggered by stress. And so I try to avoid stress, obviously, for a lot of reasons, but especially because then I will actually manifest physical symptoms.
I'm sorry. The only thing I could think of is when you just announced that you have Crohn's is she also announced that outside the medical office when it was diagnosed as she was coming down from the sedative. Yes, everyone who was in front of the medical office knows Sandra has Crohn's.
I did announce that. I do not remember that.
Oh, I remember it very vividly. It was hilarious.
I've also noticed that with Randy, he becomes like very task focused. Randy's usually very compassionate and very focused on what others need. And when he's stressed, he doesn't actually focus more on the needs of others, but he becomes less compassionate, and he also becomes a little bit harsher.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. It becomes more like I'm very short and just I don't have time for this. I got other things I gotta do. I don't know. It was a weird feeling.
Usually I never have to think about what I say about Randy, and when he's stressed, I'm like, oh, I gotta be careful what I say. But I'm glad you found a place that you love.
Yeah, I think that's, again, it's understanding what the problem is and then finding the tools of, okay, how do I get out of this? And that will be a life changer.
So the next few topics, actually, I'm really excited to talk about. So this next part that we are going to address is actually something that we addressed way back when we had Allison on. And basically, we're talking about work-life balance and how it looks different for everyone and how it doesn't have to be 50-50. And we actually put a slider up on our Instagram stories this week that is really cool to see where everyone's work-life balance is and how much they work and how much they balance and how they perceive that for themselves. I'll give you a little spoiler. Most people work more than they have a life.
I could see that being true.
So Albert T said, I would argue that it's not so much looking at work-life balance as time we spend in each one, but actually how we enjoy each half and how well it matches with our personality. For me, working as a teacher felt so overwhelming, even though I worked 25 hours. But I can work 50 hours as an AT, and I wouldn't mind. Even more when the environment and culture is great. The same goes with the life part. If I do nothing throughout the day, it bothers me because I'm either not enjoying it or not being productive. At that point, I'd rather be at work.
Yeah, I feel you, Albert. There's times where if I'm not doing anything, I'm like, I feel like I could be reading or something. I feel like I could be more productive.
Well, I think this is like so important to note because it doesn't matter how long you're spending. It's more about how you're feeling in that time spent, because you can be working 10 hours a week and get burnt out from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the job that I got burnt out with, I was only working once a week and I was dreading every single week. And it
was bad. You really were.
That was what was so concerning for me was I would work on Saturdays, and every day before that, every weekday, I would be stressed.
Yeah.
About the job.
Yep.
That is not a good feature in a job.
It is definitely not a good feature in a job. You're correct.
And this also ties into what we were talking about before where, a lot of people, we asked what is a good way to combat stress, and a lot, I got to say the number one answer was probably take time off or take time away. And yeah, that can definitely work if you have that luxury, but what if you don't?
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're still having to work a lot, we actually have a few examples about how people manage their time at work.
All right. I like this.
And this first one is anonymous.
So Anonymous says, "Hi, so I currently work at a high school setting, and this year of all years has hit me the hardest with burnout. I feel like that is going to be across the board for all athletic trainers, but especially the secondary school with COVID. The first couple of weeks, when sports started to come back fully, were okay. But as the days gradually became 3 to 4 games a day, Monday through Friday, it became overwhelming."
Even if you are obsessed with athletic training, that's overwhelming.
That's a lot. Anonymous continues with, "One day in particular, I had boys soccer, all 3 levels, a track meet, tennis, and varsity baseball. I was hit with 2 concussions on my JV soccer team, followed by a concussion, quad contusion, and sprained ankle on my varsity field, 2 ankle sprains from tennis, and to top it all off, multiple people tripping from hurdles and a couple hamstring strains. I think I got lucky with track that day. With such a high demand with injuries that day, I left feeling defeated and not ready to rinse and repeat the following day. Looking back now, the only way I was able to get through it were the students helping me on that crazy day. I attest a lot of my stress relief to them and their lightheartedness through tough situations. Tips that I would give is to understand that you are doing your best, and you should be aware of that. Surround yourself with a support system, which is huge, by the way, that is within your world of athletic training as well as one outside of it."
I don't remember who said it, but someone was saying that it's not enough if you're burnt out to take time away if you are not in love with what you're doing. So you also have to take time to fall in love with what you're doing. And that's not always possible. But if you really are committed to staying in this, then yes, take your time, do your stress relief, do your self-care, whatever you need. And then on top of that, at your work setting, what are you doing at your work to be able to fall in love with it again? And like Anonymous said, they have a support system within that they're lucky enough to have students there. Hopefully you are lucky enough to have someone to delegate to, and that's not always possible.
Yeah, seriously. Especially in the secondary school setting when
so difficult.
When a lot of times you're by yourself.
Yeah, when I was in the secondary school, it was only me.
Yes. Which is very common in California.
I also love this next one from Sawyer.
Sawyer says, "I had a preceptor always say, try and change how you treat up, think of new ways to solve recurring problems, or find somewhere else to work if needed. We made treatment fun, not just for the athletes, but also us. Playing games with the athletes, such as jousting with foam rollers on Bosu balls, or playing catch with an athlete on a Bosu ball, etc. Just being more involved with the athlete and making it more memorable." Which I think that's what I try to do. You know, it makes it fun for them and us, but it also helps them stay compliant.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because you got to do whatever makes them keep coming in.
Absolutely.
Which, I mean, bonus if it also makes you keep coming in.
See, again, that's why I'll say it again. It's not that I get up to go to work every day. I get to go play. That's what I get to do.
I think it might be a little bit different for different people, but for example, I'm an extrovert, so I really, if I were burnt out, which I probably will be again, but I know how to prevent it and I know how to get out of it, I would really pour myself into the people who surround me. And so this would actually probably be a really helpful technique for me, whereas someone who might not get that energy from other people might need something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Such as what Cassie suggested. So Cassie said she starts a small project that excites her. So like a bulletin board, office decor, ATR organization.
Who doesn't love to organize? That is a great feeling when something's organized.
Well, I think that's really cool because then, like she said, it's a small project that excites you. It's something that is not too daunting. So like, don't take on the whole ATR, but it's something that you're looking forward to, something that you can make a change.
Or start a podcast.
Oh, well, that too.
Yeah, that can work. Speaking of work-life balance, come home from being an AT to do AT things.
That's just what we do.
That's what we do here.
So we actually got a lot of responses from this, and a lot of responses actually were saying, take a full lunch break.
That's funny.
Take a full lunch break.
Lunch break.
Or utilize music to get through the day.
There have been times that I've totally forgot to eat lunch.
I know, because I find it in your lunchbox later.
Yeah, she yells at me for that.
I do not yell at you.
She gets very serious and tells me that I should eat my lunch, and then she looks at me with those eyes. See, it's like that. The people who are listening didn't see what happened, but she just looked into my soul.
Oh, did I?
Yes.
Well, it helps if you find someone to joke with.
Yep, that too.
So anyway, we're going to put a compilation of all these answers of how people prevent burnout at work, or when they're feeling burnt out, I guess, what they do at work to help with those feelings. We're going to put a whole compilation of your guys' answers on our Facebook group. I condensed them a lot because we had a lot of answers. And then this last little tidbit that we want to leave you with is from Shauna E. She said, just know that you became an AT for a reason, and there's a place that you desire, and that may even mean creating your spot.
I like that.
Yeah, I thought it was a perfect little gem to end on.
I was going to say, that's a good way to close.
So like we said, a little bit of fine print. Join our Facebook group. It's called AT Corner Community. You can look it up on Facebook, or if you scroll down, if you're watching on YouTube, or if you click on our episode on your podcast directory, you can see in the show notes we have a link for that. Also, every other episode is education or stories. This one was a story episode. Next week will be education, bringing in that interview.
Yeah, I was going to say, we already previewed it. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, so we're really excited for that, and then we'll get back to our stories. If you want to submit a story in the future, head over to our Instagram stories where we post all our upcoming topics. And I think that's it for today.
Whoa, I like that. I like that little addition to the end there. Thank you.
We were talking about burnout and how you have to change things to prevent burnout, so maybe we need a little change.
Thank you for helping us showcase athletic training behind the tape. Bye.